Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to the Midday News with me, Venice Abubedulansa. This bulletin is coming to you live from the Joy 99.7 FM studios in Kokomlemle, Accra. A digital address GA0993341. Also live on Love 99.5 FM in Kumasi. Affiliates across the country on ABN Radio in London and around the world at myjoyonline.com. The news is brought to you by Telisol 4G. Just a touch, and coming up, Attorney General advises Works and Housing Ministry to refer the controversial Saglemi Housing Project to the appropriate authority for criminal investigations. We have details. Also, woman shares chilling story of how she discovered she and her 4-month-old baby were HIV positive after her husband died of the disease.
The rest of the children tested negative, but the younger one and myself tested positive. I cursed him repeatedly for doing this to me.
We've got details plus a strategy outlined by the Health Ministry to reduce infections now thought to be on the rise. Also, we'll tell you how clapping at an event being attended by high-level dignitaries caused the wrath of Ga chiefs.
A round of applause for Ni Adute. I would have to plead on behalf of all of us who are not accustomed to Ga Adangbe culture that you pardon us.
More on how the ban on drumming and noise making is taking effect.
And in sports, House of Folk haven't won a major title since 2010. And after becoming the first club to qualify to the semi-finals of the special competition, their head coach Kim Grant says they are gradually returning to their best form.
And on Tech Thursday today, we'll tell you how pupils of Prempeh Basic School in Kumasi are providing a solution by developing a water level detector.
When they are pumping water to the tank, they have no idea where the water has reached in the tank, which leads to overflowing of water.
You definitely don't want to miss this. Kindly stay with us. It's a pleasure to have you here. The details now. Attorney General Gloria Akufu is advising the Works and Housing Ministry to refer the controversial Saglemi Housing Project matter to the appropriate authority for criminal investigations. The AG says there is no evidence to support the variation of the contract that saw the number of housing units reduced from 5,000 to 1,502, even though the price remained at $200 million. Works and Housing Minister Samuel Atachia told a press conference on Tuesday his office is yet to determine the next line of action because they are waiting for the AG's advice. Well, that advice is in now, and Joy News has exclusive details of the Attorney General's recommendations. My colleague Raymond Aqua joins me with details. Raymond, in the document we have the AG is asking the ministry to stick to the original document signed in 2013 that provides for 5,000 units. Why?
Now, specifically, it says both the executive approval and the parliamentary approval for the Saglemi housing project was for the construction of 5,000 units at this same cost of 200 million. From the documents reviewed, there is no evidence justifying the variation of the scope of the agreement in the first and the restated agreement signed by the then minister, the Honourable Collins Dauda, which reduced the number of housing units to be constructed from the 5,000 to the 1,502, even though the price remained the 200 million. It proceeded to say that since the first and the restated agreement witnessed a substantial reduction in the scope of the agreement from 5,000 to 1,502 units, the ministry ought to have resubmitted the agreement to Parliament for approval. The ministry's failure to resubmit the first and the restated agreement to Parliament for approval therefore renders the first and the restated agreement null and void. There's another point you need to note in this case. It says in the event that the variations to the first and the restated and amendment agreements lacked the appropriate authorization and approval as required by law, then the original EPC agreement signed by the parties on the 3rd of January 2014 remains the only valid agreement binding the two parties.
Raymond, we know the contractor has written quite recently to the ministry seeking to terminate the contract. What's the AG's view on that?
Okay, so it says that here, the term of the original EPC agreement signed on the 3rd of January 2014 expired in June 2017. Even though the constructor has not completed the construction of the 5,000 housing unit till date, the contractor has completed only 1,414 units. Now, the effect of the expiration is to bring a contract to an end at a certain point and to absolve the parties of the obligation. It proceeds to say that accrued rights and obligations under the agreement are, however, not affected. Such rights continue to be enforceable even after their expiration. Indeed, it says the Minister for Works and Housing requests the Attorney General to consider the brief on the status of the Saglemi housing project and to initiate steps to terminate the EPC contract between the government of Ghana and the OAS Ghana Limited, those who are the contractors in this particular case.
We know that there are more recommendations, Raymond. Give us details of that.
Okay, so there's some more recommendation that says that since the agreement expired in June 2017, there can be no termination of a non-existent agreement as requested by the ministry. It proceeds to say that the agreement having expired in June 2017, the purported notification of termination by the contractor has no basis in law and therefore is of no effect. Indeed, the ministry is therefore advised to write formally to the contractor rejecting the purported notice of termination. It also says that since the parties to the agreement are bound by the agreed accrued rights and obligations, notwithstanding its expiration, the ministry is advised to demand specific performance of the obligations of the contract as in contained in the expired agreement. Alternatively, a demand can be made to the contractor to refund all the overpayments as well as interest, subject to the conduct of a value for money audit. This is where it gets to the end. It says, in the absence of a valid explanation for the violation of the terms of the original contract, it is advised that the matter be referred to the appropriate authority for criminal investigation.
Thank you very much, Michael E. Raymond Aqua, there giving us details of the Attorney General's advice to the Works and Housing Ministry to refer the controversial Saglemi housing project to appropriate authorities for criminal investigations. We brought you details. Now, a teaching consultant at the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center, Colonel Festus Boahin Abuaje, retired, is asking government to accept the call by the NDC for a moratorium on the importation of arms in good faith. In a statement issued Wednesday evening, the party asks government to consider imposing a ban on the importation of arms into the country until emerging security threats such as terrorism, contract killings and vigilantism are dealt with. Now, Colonel Festus Boahin, retired, believes the recent incidents, including the Ayawaso West Wuogon by-election violence, justifies the NDC's call. Now, she lived happily with her husband of many years with whom she had 3 children. But 34-year-old Kate had the shock of her life when she discovered that her husband had infected her with HIV. That's not all. Their 4-month-old baby also tested positive. The shocking discovery happened moments after her husband died after being rushed to the Komfo Teaching Hospital. She shared her story on the Super Morning Show.
It was my husband who gave me the disease after he was taken ill repeatedly and was admitted at the Komfo Teaching Hospital. When he died, my child was only 4 months. He didn't tell me how he got the disease. It was whilst in the hospital that the nurses told me that my husband was suffering from HIV. So the children and I had to test. The rest of the children tested negative, but the younger one and myself tested positive. I cursed him repeatedly for doing this to me and my 4-month-old baby, who is also positive. I should have listened to the doctors and stuck to my medication. Ever since he died, I have been struggling to take care of the children. It is only God that knows how I take care of them.
Now, you heard that lady sharing her story on the Super Morning Show. Now, Kate is one of many people said to have shunned antiretroviral drugs for herbal concoctions that nearly killed her. And that was revealed in Joy News' documentary Pills and Herbs. The Ghana AIDS Commission wants people infected with the virus to stick to their antiretroviral drugs. Mr. Steve Treme Etuahine is Acting Director General of the Ghana AIDS Commission.
Ghana AIDS Commission is not against herbal medicine. We believe that herbal medicine has its place in treating patients. However, the challenge we have in the country is that we have an unregulated terrain of herbal medical practice in this country. And so people are making all kinds of false claims, and yet regulators are not doing what they are supposed to do. We have engaged the regulators to ensure that these things don't happen, but they are happening. And so we all have to sit up, because the documentary shows clearly that people are dying as a result of inaction.
Mr. Steve Tremie Tuahin is Acting Director General of the Ghana AIDS Commission. Meanwhile, Health Minister Kwaku Agyeman-Manu has been sharing government's strategy to end the spread of the disease in Ghana by 2030. My colleague Kojo Menu is at a news conference being addressed by the minister at the Information Ministry. He joins us. Kojo, how does the ministry intend to reduce the spread or eliminate HIV in Ghana by 2030?
Well, Ben, as the minister addressing the media just a while ago said that they've had challenges with the supply of, medication for HIV patients, and so they are going to improve that. And just a while ago, I spoke to some officials from the ministry who told me that, they've had issues with counterpart funding as far as Global Fund is concerned. The minister, they tell me, will go to Geneva next week to deal with some of these issues, so that they can reach their target. But the minister, we can listen to the minister talk about reviewing some of the indicators as far as this goal is concerned.
Provide antiretroviral therapy for 90% of those diagnosed and achieve viral suppression for 90% of those treated by 2030. This is a big target across the globe, and we'll soon see how we are faring. We should be testing, we should be treating, and we should make sure that we are achieving success by doing viral suppression for the type of treatment that we are given. This initiative, the 1990, has become a key strategy to end the epidemic by 2030. Let us look at where Ghana stands. In 2016, the first 90 were at 40%. That is for testing. For treatment, we are at 39%. And for viral suppression, 58%. So we were nowhere close to the 1990.
Well, Kojo, that's the minister there, but he also mentioned the ministry has launched an electronic platform to recruit and deploy health practitioners. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, that is so. And that is over the past few years, we've seen a number of nurses, for instance, picketing the health ministry over recruitment issues, including private nurses. We've also had we've seen doctors also agitating over employment issues. The minister says in order to be able to quickly address these issues and do away with the manual verification of details, they have launched an online platform that will see to it that the health professionals are recruited in quick time. And of course, he mentioned that since the NPP government took over from 2017 till now, by end of year this year, we would have seen 54 nurses, for instance, 54,000 nurses recruited by this government. We can listen to the minister.
Those calling themselves bonded and coalition of private nurses picketing the ministry almost every day. These days when you come there, you wouldn't see red bands in green and white. They are all in the field working. Yesterday somebody called me and they're asking for money for accommodation, renting. I said, now they give you a job and the minister should pay rent for you. So that is the success story that we have got to. Again, to facilitate our progress in recruiting faster, the ministry has launched an electronic platform to facilitate recruitment and placement of staff at all health facilities.
We understand the ministry has also cleared all outstanding areas on nursing training allowances, Kojo, but tell us about issues of the National Health Insurance Authority and debt owed some hospitals. Has that come up at all?
Yes, that has come up at the meeting. The minister says that as far as hospitals that are below the district level is concerned, everything owed them as of last year till date will be cleared by end of this year. However, in terms of the debt that the ministry as of the debt that he inherited from the previous administration, that has been cleared, and he made the point emphatically. But again, he says that they have introduced some electronic systems that is making the issue of revenue mobilization and payment much more easier.
Ernest Kojo Menu there giving us details of what the health minister said when he briefed the press earlier. Now, more radio stations operating with expired frequencies are expected to go down in the coming days as the National Communications Authority, NCA, continues its crackdown. In a statement released on its website, as of 10th May 2019, 41 FM radio stations operating with expired authorization as determined by the Spectrum audit have been closed down. Now, this includes 9 stations closed down last week. More stations are to be closed down before the exercise is completed at the end of the 4-week period. Meanwhile, one of the shutdown stations, Radio XYZ, says it has already initiated the process of getting back their license after being out of business for exactly a week. Eric Ahianyo is managing editor of Radio XYZ.
We have since written to the NCA. We've demonstrated our readiness to go through the processes to get our license back. The NCA has written to us explaining that the action was legal. They stand by it, but we, at the moment, are not really contesting that because in the letter they sent to us before the closure, they said they would want us to go through the processes and would consider our request. As we speak, our lawyers are also looking at the implications of the NCA action and whether there are other steps we can take. But beyond that, what we expect is that because the NCA as a regulatory body wants us to do business, that is our expectation, they would give us the necessary cooperation and then help us facilitate the processes, get our license back to resume work as soon as possible.
Okay, Mr. Hanyo, when did you write to the NCA and when did they reply?
NCA response came yesterday. Since Friday, that was last week Friday, after the closure, we have begun some levels of engagement with the NCA, one of which was a formal response they gave it.
Eric Ahianyo is managing editor of Radio XYZ, speaking to Matilda Hubemegan there. Meanwhile, managing editor of the Insight newspaper, Kwesi Pratt Jr., has described the action by the NCA as inimical to press freedom.
But if you take away the right of free expression, you weaken citizenship. And that is why we need to mobilize across all the lines. That is why we need to mobilize across religious lines, across political lines, across social lines, and so on. We need to be heard in one loud voice of condemnation against creeping tyranny, wherever that tyranny is coming from. Ghana Journalists Association has come out loud and clear in condemnation of this draconian act by the National Communications Authority. And it raised several important issues that shows that these radio stations were deliberately targeted for whatever reason. You see, one of the reasons given for the closure of the radio stations is that they are not paying for their license. They are not paying prescribed fees for using frequencies. But you and I know that some foreigners are using these frequencies for free.
Managing editor of the Insight newspaper, Kwesi Pratt Jr. there, while former President John Agyekum Kufuor is urging Ghanaians not to politicize the shutting down of some radio stations by the NCA for defaulting in renewal of their broadcasting authorization.
From another angle, one might say, was the closure done on some law? If it was on some law, and so it was done because of enforcement of that law, then we have to be careful. We do not push politics too deeply into this matter. Posturing in these matters doesn't help. So if there are people who consider themselves victims, whether it's the operating companies or if some party that considers the outlets, media outlets as outlets, supportive outlets, let them use diplomacy and tact to find solutions across the aisle of the political divide. We shouldn't.
Former President John Agyekum Kufuor. They are listening to the midday news here on Joy 99.7 FM. Still to come, we tell you how clapping at an event attended by high-level dignitaries caused the wrath of Guard chiefs. And on Tech Thursday, we tell you how pupils of the Prempeh Basic School in Kumasi are providing a solution by developing a water level detector.
When they are pumping water to the tank, they have no idea where the water has stood in the tank, which leads to overflowing of water.
Thanks for your company. It's still the midday news here on Joy 99.7 FM, but time now for sports with Ridwan Asante.
Yes, and Benny is now House of Folk are on course to winning their first major silverware in 10 years after becoming the first club to qualify to the semi-final of the normalization special competition. Yesterday, they defeated Karela by 1-0 at Accra Sports Stadium to amass 25 points, meaning that they can finish one of the top 2 spots in Zone B, and that will guarantee them passage to the next stage. This development has excited the coach of the team, Kim Grant.
I'm very, very delighted, and I'm so proud of the boys because they worked their socks off to get up that 3 points, and that shows a winning mentality and the character of the team I've got now.
What worked for House of Folk?
And we just have to just keep plugging away. We worked extremely hard. The games are going to get tougher and tougher. Hopefully we'll be successful on Sunday, but overall we maintain our passing, we maintain our movement.
You heard head coach of House of Folk, Kim Grant, there. That's your sports, Bennis.
Thank you very much, Ridwan Asante. Now, some civil society groups in the cocoa sector have debunked statement by the Cocoa Board CEO Joseph Boahin Edu that cocoa farmers are not the cause of deforestation in Ghana. According to the Ghana Civil Society Cocoa Platform, the Forestry Commission identified cocoa production and expansion as contributing over 80% to agricultural deforestation. They are therefore calling on Cocoa Board and its CEO to clarify their position on cocoa-driven deforestation. Obed Owusu Adai is convener of the group, and he's been addressing the media in Accra today.
A recently reported statement of the Chief Executive Officer of the Ghana Cocoa Board sought to shift the blame of cocoa-driven deforestation to timber loggers. Speaking in Switzerland to a group of chocolate manufacturers, the Cocoa Board CEO is quoted as saying, and I quote, "Though cocoa have been planted on lands in Ghana which in the past were reserve forests, the activities of lumbering companies reduced the forest before cocoa farmers converting the depleted vegetation into cocoa farm," unquote. He further stated that, and I quote, "So in effect it is not cocoa farmers who cause deforestation, but now the general idea is that cocoa is causing deforestation. I beg to differ," unquote. These assertions by the CEO of Cocoa Board appears to indicate that cocoa farmers only go into the forest after loggers have already removed some trees, and therefore cocoa farmers or cocoa production cannot be said to be causing deforestation.
Obed Owusu Adai is convener of the group that is calling on the Cocoa Board to clarify its position on deforestation caused by cocoa farmers. Now, the opposition National Democratic Congress has dismissed the latest Economist Intelligence Unit predicting re-election victory for the governing New Patriotic Party in 2020. The ERU said in a report on Ghana released recently that, quote, Nana Akufo-Addo, the president, and his NPP will see the country's economic situation generally improve during the remainder of their term of office. In the presidential election, it says Akufo-Addo will face a challenge from John Mahama, Ghana's president from 2012 to early 2017, who was elected leader of the opposition NDC in February 2019. The report maintains that it will be difficult for the NDC under Mr. Mahama to portray itself as the better custodian of Ghana's economy, especially as the country's growth outlook is fairly strong, end quote. The NDC has rejected this report. We are joined on the line by national organizer Joshua Akamba. Great to have you here, sir. Now, your party has dismissed this report, which is emphatic that Mr. Akufo-Addo and the NPP will secure re-election in 2020. But there have been previous predictions by the same organization, and they have come to pass.
Thank you so very much, and good afternoon to your cherished listeners. Thank you, Madam. We respect the EIU, their survey. It only would motivate the NDC to work more harder and make sure that our message go right down to the electors who are going to be voting for us. Madam, if you do remember also, they also had prediction that didn't come to pass. I'm sure you remember that. You remember even recent elections that they had predicted that Atiku of Nigeria was going to win. That didn't come to pass, did it? They also predicted that Madam Hillary Clinton was the one that was going to win. That didn't come to pass. All that I will say, we respect their survey, and as a party, we are also quest to work very, very hard. We are going to work hard to make sure that the NDC takes Ghanaian out of this suffering that Ghanaians are going through. I'm sure that we'll have to see the details, more detailed report on it to understand. Over 7,000 bank staff have lost their job. I don't know whether it did capture that. Will they be voting, or they still think that for the job lost, they will still go ahead and vote for the MPP.
Mr. Akamba, we would have to leave it here for now, but we will definitely return to this conversation in subsequent bulletins. That was national organizer of the NDC, Joshua Akamba. Now, the ban on drumming and noise making is in full force, and not even the presence of the First Lady, Rebecca Akufo-Addo, at an event will let the Wulome and Name tone it down. Hannah Odame reports how chiefs also present at an event to launch the pediatric intensive care unit clapped, but that was not an exciting moment for the chiefs because they expressed anger when the audience did that. Here's her report.
At any event, it's normal to clap when a guest is introduced. That was exactly what the audience at the commissioning of the new Rebecca Pediatric Intensive Care Unit was doing when the chiefs were introduced.
In this company is the Otiame Ni Adote. A round of applause for Ni Adote. Thank you. We're joined this morning also by...
This prompted the MC to plead for the chiefs to allow for some clapping.
I would have to plead on behalf of all of us who are not accustomed to Ga Adangbe culture that you pardon us in view of the excitement and the euphoria that we just clap for today. We know that it runs counter to the tradition of the Ga Adangbe at this particular time. Respectfully, I ask for your pardon. Thank you.
But not everyone remembered this piece of advice, so the clapping and noise making continued, prompting another caution, this time by the health minister.
The MC has pleaded with Nime Name that they should allow us to do clapping and a little bit of noise. But I also plead that we bring down the tone a little bit in respect of culture and tradition.
In the end, a drumming and poetry recital segment on the program was limited to only the recital. Just a reminder, the ban on drumming and noise making is in full force. For Joy News, my name is Hannah Odame.
The interesting report there. Now, most of us, I must say, use reservoirs to ensure that we have water, especially when you don't have water flowing through your taps all the time. Well, some pupils of Prempeh Basic School in Kumasi are providing a solution by developing a water level detector, because it's quite difficult sometimes to know the level of your water in the reservoir. On Tech Thursday, Love FM's Chrissy Deborah speaks with them on how the technology works.
Nowadays, a lot of homes in Ghana, especially that have overhead tanks, suffer a lot of problems. That is, when they are pumping water to the tank, they have no idea where the water has reached in the tank, which leads to overflowing of water.
Master Kelvin Obeng and his colleagues set up a simple machine comprising a resistor transistors, cables, and LED bulbs.
The yellow LED is on, indicating that the water is at the bottom of the tank. The blue LED is also on, which indicates that the tank is half filled with water, and it will prompt the user that the tank is getting ready to fill up, so he or she should get ready to turn off the pump. The red light is also on, indicating that the tank is full. When it's red and the buzzer too is sounding alarm, it means that the tank is full with water, so the user should turn off the pump to avoid overflowing of water.
Kwesi there, brother, with today's edition of Tech Thursday. Before we go, we need to know what's trending, and Mapito CBD is here to help.
Well, people on social media are talking about security agencies that will meet the leadership of the Christian community to discuss how to enhance security at the various churches. Isaac on Facebook says, this is completely insane. Does that mean that a possible terror activity will be targeting only Christians? And Cora says, it has come to that. What happened to Isaiah 54:17? And Anthony says, I personally don't believe this terrorism threat or whatever. I think it's another ploy to create fear and panic in the country.
Thank you, Mapito. That's how we end this edition of Joy News, midday news here on Joy 99.7 FM. I'm Venice Abubedulansa. Before I go, top story, Attorney General advises Works and Housing Ministry to refer the controversial Saglemi Housing Project matter to the appropriate authority for criminal investigations. You can log on to myjoyonline.com for more news. Enjoy the rest of your day.